If you want to get to the really interesting jobs that motivate you, that you are really burning for, you need to have a certain interaction with other people, particularly also clearly with the people who take career decisions.
Welcome to Get Inspired, your podcast to feel connected, empowered and inspired by real-world role models and their stories of managing parenthood with successful careers. Antonella Mei-Pochtler's career has taken her from youngest female partner by age 30 at Boston Consulting Group to supervisory board member positions in both the corporate world and the field of education. As she explains in this podcast, that journey happened partly because she consciously chose a rich and challenging life, but also because she was in the room when those decisions were being made. Stay tuned for more. Here's our host, Ricarda Engelmeier.
Antonella, I first would like to start with introducing you. And there is a short introduction and a long introduction, right? So the short one would be that you are an Italian businesswoman, which I wasn't aware of the fact that you're Italian. I always thought that you're Austrian, but you live in Austria, but you're actually Italian, and obviously worked and traveled the world as a strategy leader and as a businesswoman. And for a very long time, you've been with the Boston Consulting Group in the Global Executive Committee. And that's also where I met you. And that would be sort of, let's say, the major part of the introduction of you, where you focused on digital transformation, strategy, and obviously organizational development. Now, there's a lot more. And I would like to stress this because I would also like to talk to you about all of these elements in what you've been doing in your professional career, because you've now ended a couple of international boards as well. I'm just going to name a few. You're on the advisory board of Generali, Publicis, but also ProSieben, West Wing, the TUM Venture Labs. There is a number of other boards that you are on, also including a couple of social activities and social causes. And from what I have read and what we have been speaking about, you're very much focusing on education and on equality in education. So, for example, you're at the advisory board of Tech for All, but you are a co-founder of the Business School, Business at School, sort of educational project, and as well a co-founder of the Forms School Network. That's obviously also here in Munich. And there is a bit of an Africa link as well, from what I can see. Maybe you can share a little bit on that later in our discussion as well. And there's one other element apart from, let's say, the business side and the social side. You've also been very much involved in politics, and you've been from 2018 to 22 the special advisor to the Austrian Federal Chancellor and heading a think tank, an Austrian government think tank called Think Austria, that's responsible for strategic planning. So there is a lot of elements, and this is leading me to the first question and the main topic of what I would like to discuss with you about today is career path, right? And here in Germany we have a lot of we are still sticking quite a bit to sort of linear careers. But then you've obviously had it both. You've had a quite sort of a linear career during your long time at BCG, all the way up to the top committee. But then also you started venturing out into various fields. Can you tell us a little bit about how this feels for you, and if you've planned it? Obviously, you've probably not planned it this way, but how it feels like sort of planning it in one way and then actually branching out.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I think, for me, the question is, and it was never planned, how to live a rich life, and I think this should be, in a sense, also our goal, a rich life in the sense of doing what you feel you are good at, in the sense of doing what you feel you can do a real contribution to society, which for me is very important, and also a life where you live in balance. And I think that there are a lot of forces that try to bring you out of balance. Because, if you think about the linear careers, there are a lot of expectations. And while we were just trying to fight with Zoom, we were discussing the fact that women are very much confronted with a lot of expectations. And by the way, also men, and I was very happy to see that David is is participating, because also men are totally confronted continuously with expectations, and we always have to strike a balance. How do I deal with these expectations, and how do I really do the life as I feel it is most appropriate for what I feel comfortable with. And in my life, I tried always to follow the principle. I would like to be comfortable in what I'm doing, and it can be very intensive in one direction or the other, but one needs to really have a certain sense of agency, control on your life. I think that's quite important, and not to give the control on your life to others.
So with agency and sort of expectations, what you mean is sort of that people expect you to then just go one step higher and higher in the company that you are, or in a linear career. Are these the kind of expectations that you're referring to?
Funnily enough, that's quite interesting that you're saying, there is the career expectation, that you have a linear upward expectation. This was not totally the case when I started at BCG. Yes, there are the career paths. So BCG has a very clear career evolution. So what you can do. But I think there was no particular expectation that I would become a leader in various areas and go into the executive committee. That was actually when I got my first child. A lot of colleagues said, "Oh, what a pity that you will not be continuing to work with BCG anymore, because we know that it's difficult for a woman with a child to continue to work." So totally crazy. I really said, why do you think that's going to change? So in a sense, you are confronted with, on the one side, with a certain expectation that careers are linear, and on the other side, with the societal expectation that you should be sort of spending time at home and not be spending too much time, devote too much time to your career. So I think these are the various expectations that you are confronted with. So, and also that, perhaps a break, or just going, just downstepping and doing something different is not so common. Actually, I think that's something that has changed in many companies, but that I think in professional services companies is well covered, because you have the programs where you can sidestep and downstep and then continue again, depending on what your phase in life requires from you. I think that's a very important part, So understanding the expectations from all sides and being yourself in command of which one you fulfill and which one you do not fulfill. I think your own personal expectations are the most important ones.
And then again, you have sort of expectations, or society sort of expectations, that are changing, and companies are adjusting to this, right? So I remember when we met, and I was sort of just out of university, basically, and had a couple of friends, including my husband, working at BCG. And I remember you were one of the very few women at the partner level. And I think this kind of expectation when you were in this kind of, let's say, family creation time, would probably that one should or will probably leave, right? I think these kind of expectations have probably changed towards side steps, horizontal moves, so part-time, or actually staying full-time. I would have two questions, actually. One is, what is your observation of what actually really changed? And the other thing is, how do you feel about this? What are your feelings now, seeing that companies are trying to adjust?
So I think a lot has changed. And some of the early adopters, some of the more progressive companies have found a lot of followers. So, the good thing, in the war for talent, there is a clear improvement in the policies that companies are offering. And I think one should really look closely before joining a company is it just a policy on paper, or is it really really seriously covered? And I think, I want to come back to David, the key indicator is if women and men alike are utilizing the policies. And I just give you a short, one comment that a lot of people didn't understand. We had at some stage at PCG, there was a discussion if we should have a women leave of absence policy, which actually was introduced as women leave of absence policy. Special policy for women. I mean, there is a general leave of absence policy, but then there was a special policy for women, and I was totally against it. And a lot of people said, really, and we really do not understand you. Why are you against it? And I said, I'm simply against it because I think it's not correct that it's a women leave of absence policy. Either we introduce a policy that also men can take advantage of, or it's not. It doesn't follow the principle of equality. And secondly, there will be always the feeling that we do some special treatment for women, which might not be correct. And I think it's really important that whatever policy we introduce that is family friendly, it should be family friendly for men. And men have the same right and the same duty to take family time, and I think it's totally wrong to introduce things that are just good for women. Even though I would really appreciate that women take advantage of it, but they will take advantage of it with a better feeling if men also take advantage of it, and if we show that, and we come to that it's not career, that it doesn't create career harm. I think that's quite important, and that is the measure. That is the ultimate measure. Is it harming you in any way or not?
I mean, that's also why for us it is really important to have men on the program. And it's we are not that much above average, I would say, about the German average, because there are not that many fathers who are taking parental leave. But obviously we all know that the more fathers take parental leave, the more normal a time out in a career path becomes, and the easier it is for men and women to return after a time out. And that does not necessarily need to be the parental leave. It can be, as you said, it can be a sabbatical. It can be taking care of your parents. It can be a lot of things. Now, it seems like there is a certain, let's say, again, expectation or normality about taking parental leave, especially for women. And in Germany, this seems to be the kind of more or less 1 year. It can somewhere between 6 months and 14 months. And then the question is, how do you come back? And it seems like there is a sort of one part of our industry, mainly focusing on, let's say, consultancies, law firms, also private equity, but generally the finance world, where there's another argument, which is that the working model, once you return, is difficult to deal with. So if you have to travel, let's say in the previous consulting work, you would have to travel Monday to Thursday, live and work basically at the client's base, and then even on Friday you have a full day. So that kind of working model, I would say, is slightly difficult if you have small children who you want to see when they are still awake and during the week. What kind of changes do you see there? I mean, because that seems to be the last argument for a lot of people in specifically these sort of sectors that I've just mentioned, to say, yes, it's all fine in the rest of the industry, but not with us.
I think, the professional services companies and lawyers and these areas, really in these areas, it's not so difficult to have a flexible working model, given that you have mainly project work. And I think that there are two types of flexibility that you need. You need the flexibility to have time out for a certain period and get in again, as you mentioned. I think the fact that you are in parental leave for 6 months, I think that's great. I personally would always recommend to have a 6 months, but not much longer, parental leave for both women and men, and then come back possibly in part-time, if it's better, or with some flex time. But I think that part-time works well. I think, at BCG we had the possibility to have 1 day off, 2 days off, and I think one can define that. Given that you work in teams, there is a possibility to allocate the work in a way that you can really have time off, because I think, you need to really have real time off. The problem is those who will say, I work part-time, but then they work full-time. I think that there is also that problem, that a lot of people are really... are continuing to work, in the same model. But I would always recommend that you do not take too much time off. Why? Because it's quite important to participate to the evolution of the company. And because the evolution of the company is so much more fast-paced in these times, you cannot stay out for too much time. Of course, you can stay out, you come back in, but then you are like a new entrant. And I think, you lose some of the value that you had from your experience before. And I think that that is something that one needs to balance out, and I think, that's one thing. And in any case, one needs to learn to deal with the parallel requirements of the full family life and the children's requirements, and the office requirements and the job requirements. And I would separate the office requirements, office meaning team mainly, team requirements, and the job requirements. In doing the job, you can probably do most of the qualified jobs, and we are in a group of highly qualified people, super well educated and qualified people. It's not, we don't have the workers on the machine, In a highly qualified area, you can do most of the work online. You can do most of the work per online, per video, in a remote way. Remote working works really well in terms of delivering the results that are expected. Yeah. But the issue is really the integration in the team. And is that working well if you are out of the office for 6 months and then you have a very, very low office presence, or team presence? I would call it team presence, because you can meet the team in a different way, not in the office. But you need to have a regular regular face-to-face team interaction.
So the former Teilzeitfalle, or sort of part-time issues that we used to have, are now converting into remote work issues, or remote work falle, because out of a sudden you're not visible anymore. I mean, that's actually an interesting part. And I think maybe I can add one more element in terms of the flexibility that is also given here. It seems to be a Trojan horse as well, because sometimes when you get more flexibility, it also means that you need to be at home, or you can be at home, which ultimately can also lead to more care work, like we've seen in the Corona times. So you end up being, let's say, part-time, maybe, hopefully not punished for being part-time in your career path, and then remote might not be visible, and then flexible might actually have to do more homework. So this seems like a triple whopper in a kind of into the wrong direction. So how do you convert that? I mean, what can you do? Maybe let's start with the career. If you are part-time, as you said, let's assume you go for 6 months into a parental leave, you come back, you go into part-time. Will you still manage to get on that career path that takes you to the top? Or what do you need to do to convert a part-time job into something that actually does allow further career stops?
I think you can do that, because I think, in the end, you need to deliver on what the expectations are. But then, I would recommend, if you are part-time, not to utilize the part-time work to do only remote work. You need to have a minimum presence. And I think, I really like your description of sort of Visibilitätsfalle, let me call it this way. I think you need to interact with people, because otherwise, I think particularly for certain career decisions, and it's not just career. I think, I never looked at the career as being my goal. I always looked at, do I get to the really interesting jobs? I'm very intrinsically motivated, but I'm very much motivated by the challenge of the job. Otherwise, I would not have left BCG to join government and work as an advisor to the chancellor, which is a totally different job and very, very demanding, also time demanding. I would have not done it if it weren't for the demanding type of job which I really was craving for. I think that's the thing. So if you want to get to the really interesting jobs that motivate you, that you are really burning for, you need to have a certain interaction with other people, and particularly also clearly with the people who take career decisions. And I think that is really one of the challenges that one has. I think, a lot has improved in terms of quality of work in a remote way, so we can deliver a lot in a remote way, but can the job deliver to us in a remote way? And I would say you need to overcome the Visibilitätsfalle. So if you go back in part-time, have a certain presence and really try to manage the team interaction and the interaction with the company in a way that you have a certain presence. And by the way, I think you mentioned another important thing, and in the Corona time, I was heading for the government the future operations, COVID future operations task force, which was tracking, the whole medium to long-term development with COVID, not the day-to-day management, even though we had a lot of day-to-day management too. But but we managed a lot, what is the medium to long-term outlook. And we tracked the mental health of women in different job categories and how it suffered during COVID. And it was totally clear that the demands on women had exploded in the COVID time, and because of the remote work, the families and the surrounding expected that women are anyhow available and fully available without factoring in that they were not available because they have the full job to do, and because it was expected, because everybody knew that the job had to be done remote. The job had anyhow to be done, but also all the expectations on private, on your family job exploded. And I think, it's still above average and it didn't decrease that much, So I think that I'm coming back to what I said initially. You need to have control of your life yourself and also limit the expectation and create your own expectation management and manage it.
Yeah, I think this is a very good way of almost closing this interview, because I have one last question that I would like to ask. So one of our main let's say topics here is dealing with obviously the working model and the care model and mental load model, as you rightly mentioned. In terms of mental load is the major thing. But it's also of how and what happens during that time out is how you can actually learn skills during that parental time when you go on parental leave, and how you can convert these into life skills that help you dealing with your, let's say, situation at home, but also leadership skills. And so my last question that we always ask to all our Impulse speakers is, what parenting skills do you see can be converted best into leadership skills? Maybe you want to share one of yours, or maybe one that you see in your companies that you're working with.
So I tell you what I learned, but it's always dependent on your personality. I think I learned at max delegation, trusting others to do things, and trusting others to do things also with your kids. I think it takes time, and also not expecting that things are done in exactly the way you would do that. and having an understanding for other points of view and other approaches to doing things. Secondly, humbleness. Ricardo, I don't need to tell you, if you start at BCG, you are very successful as BCG. I became a partner with 30. I was one of the youngest partners. Actually, I was the youngest partner, female partner at BCG, and I think the second youngest globally. You feel you can walk on water. You are, the master of the universe, and then you find out, and I had already kids, I had actually 2 of my 3 kids, I had, when I became partner, you find out that you are not the master of the universe, not at all, because you are not at all good at doing a lot of stuff. And I think this is a wonderful, lesson in humbleness and and also understanding what is really important, also what are really also important personality characteristics. The empathy, social capabilities, you have to learn them much more in your, and I'm still not particularly good at that compared to many others, but I improved on that. So that is also something that you learn, and also, I think, just clearly the multitasking capability, and the recognition that on the multitasking front, there are certain things that you do well and some other that you do not do well. And I think that develops in general, the sense for others and also the appreciation for other skills in the team. And I think that I think is very important in leadership. It's very, very important in the leadership, because I think that anyhow, the leadership requirements have become significantly more human and team-centric over time. You can be an excellent expert, but in the end, to become an excellent leader, you have to have the capability the empathy, the understanding of others, the capability to manage others requires understanding them and understanding what is relevant to them. This you definitely learn. You have all very young kids, but when the kids become teenagers, I think, since I was always active in technology and media and branding, you have a much better understanding about what is relevant at the time, what is moving, just normal families. If you have kids, and if you stay just with grown-ups, you of the same educational background, you are not, you have not the same input and the same impulses that you need to be a good marketeer. So I really learned also factually some technical skills that probably were not that developed before.
Yeah. Antonella, thank you so much. Thank you so much also specifically because what I really take with me is this sort of appreciation of other skills in the team, because in a way you need that in your team, but you need it at home as well, because we always preach that you need a village to raise a child, and then you need to see the skills of the people in the village to actually put a good team and a good village together. So I think it's on both sides. Thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you very much, Ricarda.